I was absolutely petrified when I did that.
What's the best bit of advice you've ignored?
There is a perception out there that, parents think this, but they're not in the classroom and they're not teachers. So I think sometimes people do have a preconceived idea of military and military leadership. I don't like this word. And it's an F word, and it has 4 letters, but it's fail.
Welcome to The Heads. I'm James. This is a series of long-form conversations with the head teachers shaping education today. I'm really pleased that our guest today is Sarah Cartwright-Styles. She has 2 careers. She's the head of a nursery and junior school, Alleyn in Hampstead, responsible for some of the youngest and most formative years of a child's life. She's also a senior reservist. You might think that those 2 identities sound like a contrast, but you could also argue that they're the same thing. They're both about service, they're both about forming young people, and I want to understand in the first instance how she holds them both. Sarah, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you.
Talk to us about being a senior reservist and the head of a junior school. Most people would think it's a struggle to explain what those 2 things have in common. What do you say when people ask that?
So James, I do get asked this question quite often when people find out about my 2 lives, but actually they are really, really aligned. Dedication, service, and really, really good organisation. And I think having those organisation skills help in order to balance the 2 lives that I hold. I think it's also about being pragmatic about what can be done in a certain amount of time. But I would suggest that the similarities lie very much in line with leadership and the skills that I have learnt in both education and the military, but also how they cross-reference each other as well.
Has your service taught you things that teacher training never could have?
Yes, I think a lot of the things that I've learned in the military and through my basic training come from understanding the self and really understanding what makes you tick and how you respond when the pressure is on. And I think that's really important when you move into teaching and you move up into leadership to understand how you are going to respond to pressure, how you're going to respond to the out of the ordinary and those curveballs that come your way. I think what the military has taught me is how to step back and actually not react to things, but to respond. Yeah. And I think that's a really important difference.
What did you want to be first? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
So as a child, I cannot remember ever wanting to be anything but a RENS officer, which is Women's Royal Naval Service. My father was in the service himself. He was in midget submarines in the Second World War. And I grew up in that world. And I really aspired to being an officer in the Royal Navy. I think it was about service. Again, I've always had a strong sense of what's wrong and right and about standing up for what I think is the right thing to be doing. And I think the service life gave me that opportunity. And that's what I saw as a child growing up. When did teaching come into your life? When did the excitement of educating young people first take hold of you? So my mother was a head teacher. So I've done both roles. And I think I also used to find a lot of my resources, my toys, for example, would be a resource at mum's school. She would take my stuff and I'd suddenly be looking for, I remember looking for a little cart. It was like a shopping cart, a market cart. And I was like, Mum, I can't find that anymore. And I went to school with her one day and there it was in the nursery classroom. So I've sort of grown around both roles. I think education for me came to me a wee bit later. I'd been in the military, but I had been doing some instruction whilst I was in the military as well. And I think growing up with a mother who was a head teacher, and also that love of learning, but also that supporting other people in their learning journeys as well came to me whilst I was serving in the armed forces. Do you think the military element to your background has ever put you at odds with the education establishment? Do you think people are looking at you through a different prism? And more importantly, do you care? So I think sometimes people do have a preconceived idea of military and military leadership, that it's all about giving orders, standing at the top, being in charge. And actually, that I would believe is a misconception, that actually that may have been the military of old, but the military of now is much more collegiate. And so I think sometimes when people hear that I'm a naval officer, they think, oh gosh, we're going to get somebody who's going to come in and just tell us exactly what to do. And that isn't always the case. It's about that collegiality and working as a team. And I think that's that misconception. I do care because I do think that actually leadership comes in many forms. I do care about what people think about leadership, and I don't think it's a linear single thing. I think it's actually, you have different leadership styles depending on what situation you're in. For example, if you are leading a school and a crisis happens and all eyes are looking at you, sometimes you just have to set that direction and say, right, I need you to go and do this, I need you to go and do that. And that type of leadership has its place. When you're bringing about change, you're managing change, you're leading change, you need to inculcate the team around you. And I think leadership is about building that team and being part of the team, not just being the person above the team.
When you build the team, is there a commonality between what attributes you're looking for, or do you want different people to bring different things?
I think it's really important to have difference within your team so that you can have respectful and reasonable challenge in those discussions, because just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's necessarily the right one. And I think it's right to be challenged, respectfully, of course, and be challenged on what you're saying or what the direction of travel, to make sure that it is the right one. And sometimes people asking questions in a different frame make you think about things in a different way.
Did you have heroes growing up?
So I had heroes. I had real people as heroes. I had a teacher when I was at secondary school. She was a wonderful lady. She actually was my RE teacher, and I obviously went on to read theology. So there was an influence there from her. And she emulated all the attributes that I think are valid and the values that we should be upholding now. She was incredibly kind. She gave everybody time, but you never messed with her. You did not mess with Miss Rodwell at all. And then as I became older and I joined the Navy, there was another hero that I have. And even to this day, I think about this officer that I worked for. And I always go back to what I think, what would she have done in this situation? How would she have responded to this challenge? And the reason for that, again, she gave people time, she was kind, but you knew exactly where you stood with her.
You run a nursery and a junior school.
Yep.
What do we undervalue about the early years, and why does the education system keep making the same mistakes?
Do you think we do undervalue the early years?
Well, I think some people do. I think there's a lot of, maybe with increased pressure later in a child's development, we look to see them needing to succeed more. I think maybe the early years, there is a perception that you give them some Lego bricks and some colouring and you say, get on with it, and that you're not educating, you're a childminder. There we are, I've been quite forthright. Maybe that's undervaluing the early years, and maybe that is a perception people have.
And I think there is a difference. So I understand now, thank you. I think there's a difference there, because I think when you talk about the early years, people do have this perception that it's just play. But play is such an important part of learning, of growing and developing. There are different early years settings, of course there are, and there are some early years settings that are nurseries that literally more childminder. But even they have a great place and a part to play in the growth of young children and who they're going to become. The early years are the formative years, and they're known as that, and that's absolutely right. And the reason they're known as the formative years is because they often form the adult you're going to become. I feel that it's a real privilege to be working with the youngest of children and to be in that wonderful space of the early years. The practitioners are incredibly experienced. They will think very carefully and deeply about what is perceived as the play that you may see children doing, but actually the thought behind that, and in order to help them develop and go through the early learning goals, there's a lot of skill and a lot of preparation behind that.
Do you think there's a tension between the warmth and the creativity that early years education needs and the rigour that you bring to the role, or do they complement each other?
I think they can complement each other very much, actually. I think some people see that, you have to have a strict formal environment in order to learn. I challenge that. I think it has to be an environment where you feel comfortable. It has to be an environment where you're known and where you're cared for. And that actually generally comes from warmth. So you can have warmth and rigour in equal measure. I think sometimes if you're too cold and standoffish, what happens in learning is a barrier will come down, and you as an adult will fear what is happening, or you as a child, will fear what's happening around you, and that will stop you from growing and flourishing, which is what the early years is all about.
Do you think parents know everything about childhood? Do you think there are some truths that parents don't acknowledge, that they don't know, that only teachers can see?
Yeah. I think it's a partnership. I think education, teachers and parents have to be a strong partnership, and that partnership is really based on trust. And I think there is a perception out there that, parents think this, but they're not in the classroom and they're not teachers. But actually, I think, why are we having that conversation? We need to bring them into the classroom. We need to support the parents in understanding what we are doing. And I use the isosceles triangle, this here as our partnership, with the child at the top. And on the other corners are the school and the parents. And we need to work together to uphold that child at the top of that triangle. And the only way to do that is through dialogue, conversation and trust on both parties.
So let's look at the top of that isosceles triangle. A 5-year-old child.
Yep.
What are the signs to suggest that a 5-year-old child is thriving, and what might parents miss?
So if a 5-year-old child is thriving, they will be happy, they will be challenging, they will be taking risks in their learning. And taking risks in learning is so, so important, because sometimes that's where the greatest learning happens. Actually, getting it wrong is sometimes the best way to learn. As long as that's done in an environment where it's okay to get it wrong, and let's unpick it and let's find the solution together. I think the children will be very happy, they will be joyful, they will want to be in school, they will be loving their learning, they will be having conversations about their learning at home, talking to their parents. And the second part to your question of what might parents miss, I think it's that question that I've heard parents say, what did you do today? And the child replies, nothing. Obviously, as educators, we don't bring the children into school to just sit there and do nothing all day. But often that's an indicative part of the fact that they've worked really hard and they're now tired, and they need to kick off their shoes and do what makes them happy at home, be it kicking a ball outside, scooching up with a book, or doing what makes them happy. So sometimes coming home and saying I've done nothing can be a sign of thriving, because it's that exhaustion at the end of the day.
Is it better for a young child to be right or to be heard?
Interesting. I think heard, actually, because how are you going to understand what's right or what isn't right if you're not listened to and if your views aren't valued? And I think, definitely to be heard, because then you can unpick it and have a decent dialogue. Is there an individual child throughout your teaching career that's changed the way that you think about teaching? You don't have to mention them by name, but let me think. Or it could be a type of behaviour, or it could be a journey that you've seen multiple children go on. But what's informed your thoughts on educating, on teaching? So I think when I first started teaching many years ago, my very first teaching job as a newly qualified teacher, I was in a year 1 classroom, and it was quite a formal environment. And I had a number of children who were incredibly creative. And so I had to look at the way they were learning and think about the conversations they were having and change the way I delivered the curriculum so that they could be being their best self and actually being able to be creative. So I actually changed the environment of the classroom. I actually moved the tables out of the way. We didn't really have tables. I moved them to the sides of the classroom so they could move a lot more, because these children that I had in this class just needed to move all the time. And then I think I carried that on. And as I grew as a teacher, I realised that actually not every child was going to access what I was teaching the same way. So it really came to me how important it was that I knew and understood the individual child and what made them tick, and also to adapt my teaching to them, as opposed to expecting them to adapt to me.
Do you think pupils need to see a 360-degree version of their teachers? Do they need to see the sillier side as well as the serious side? Or do you think there's only so much you should show them? How does that work?
I think it's about getting a balance right, and it depends on the age of the children that you're teaching. I think it's really important that they see you as a human. I think it's really important they see you as someone they can go and talk to. But I think it's really important that they also understand the boundary between being, you're not there to be their best friend, you are there to help and support them in their journey to adulthood, but also that you are a human being as well. And you do have a life. One of the things I found when I was a year 6 teacher for a little while, and they loved the fact that they knew about my Navy career, because it gave them a little opening into my world and my life. And they really responded well to that. They didn't just see me as this hierarchical figure who was their teacher and was there to tell them to get their English books out and write their essays and prepare them for their 11+ exams. But I was actually a little bit more than that as well. And they did respond and respond positively to that. They also particularly liked it when I brought things in to show them. So I shared with them some of my military medals, some of the medals of my father, but also my hobbies. So when I talked about, I love getting out on the water and being in a powerboat, and I talked to them about that, and they would ask questions and they were genuinely interested. And I think a lot of that comes from being human. And actually, we are humans and we are social beings. And I think that's why the children like to see you as another human social being as well.
As part of this series, we've spoken to other heads, Tom Letitia, and he mentioned the importance of vulnerability, being able to show maybe not a sillier side, but a more vulnerable part, a more honest part. Would you echo some of those sentiments?
Absolutely. So as I've said earlier, that actually I think sometimes the best parts of learning come in getting it wrong. And I will quite often share my story with my students about when I've got things wrong, or I model it, or just inadvertently I will get something wrong in a lesson, and it's modeling that to say it's okay, the world is still turning. So talking about the vulnerability piece, I think there is a lot to learn in that, just like we talked about learning about mistakes and getting it wrong and modeling that, proving and showing to the children that it's okay to get it wrong, the world will keep turning. I think showing to the children as well that actually sometimes you might have had an aspiration and it didn't go quite well. That's okay too. You might have applied for a school and you didn't get there. That's okay. And I think sharing that with them and showing that human side is really important.
You mentioned hobbies a moment ago.
Yep.
I've got a big belief that now nobody talks about hobbies. Everyone talks about side hustles. And when you put side hustle into vernacular, it means people want results, they want commerce from it, and it almost has removed the joyful element of a hobby. And nobody has hobbies anymore, and I think that's a real shame. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I think hobbies are really important actually, because they're your release when everything's getting busy or when everything is happening around you. Sometimes to just go into something that you enjoy, you're comfortable doing, and it can take your mind into another space is really, really important. Be that sport, be it knitting, which is having a great resurgence, I hear at the moment. Just something to actually take your mind somewhere else and just enjoy for the sake of doing that, as opposed to having a reward at the end of it. You don't have to have a reward. I can tell you I don't have rewards after I've been to the gym for an hour, but I do really, really enjoy it.
We've crowdsourced some questions, and now feels like a good opportunity to bring in one anonymous from a parent who is a parent of a child currently at your school. And they have said, is there one word that you're trying to remove from the conversation about young children?
One word.
Could be a phrase.
Can I have a phrase?
Yeah.
I think often, so the one word I absolutely don't allow to be used in our school. And when I'm talking to parents about it, I don't like this word. And it's an F word, and it has 4 letters, but it's fail and failure. And I think that should be the word that's removed, because I think it's not about failure. It's actually that environment wasn't the right environment for somebody to flourish, or actually they haven't got it yet. And if we think about Carol Dweck and we think about the idea of the power of yet and that growth mindset, that's what we need to be inculcating. Because I think the word fail or failure is such a negative connotation. That's the one I'd like to remove.
Sarah, let's go to school. Let's go to your school.
Okay.
Alleyn's. You're shaping the very earliest experience a child has at Alleyn's Hampstead. What do you want them to feel in their first week?
Joy. Utter joy. I think skipping in, if you come to the gate in the morning and you see the children coming in, you see the joy, you see the enthusiasm of them running through the gate. It really is. It's such a privilege to see and to be part of that. But also that's what education's about. That's what school should be about, particularly in those formative early years. And
what does Alleyn's bring to that journey, to that dialogue, to that experience?
I think the environment that Alleyn's have created, but also I think those values, the rock values, are absolutely integral into bringing that joy into the children. The children respect each other. They are curious and they are kind, and they are so important in supporting them in their learning journey, but also in the joy that they come into school with.
The Hampstead community is curious, creative, opinionated, high achieving. How do you take away the pressure from a 4-year-old?
I think it's about dialogue actually with the whole community, and actually going back to basics about what are we here for. We're here for, I'm going to say, Flossie. We're here for Flossie. We're here for Flossie to flourish. And that is what our environment is about. It's about taking the parents on that journey as well. And as a through school from 2 to 18, we can really support that, building up on that curiosity, taking that pressure of those exams. Yes, preparing them for the exams. Yes, preparing them for exams as they get older, but actually in a way that is natural and is just part of their journey, as opposed to a pressure. And again, coming back to that word, fail. You haven't failed your exams. You've done the best you can. And if every child knows that that's what they're doing and they're being their best self, that's what we're here to do.
You mentioned exams. A question from a colleague of yours was, and I better read this right, make the case against the 11 plus. Why is the whole journey model better for children? Sounds like a bold question, a bold statement. Are you looking forward to washing your hands of the 11 plus exams? How does that work?
No, because we are preparing children for whatever life throws at them. And let's face it, you mentioned about Hampstead being a place where people do move in and out of as well. There is a semi-transiency sometimes, and life happens to people and they have to move to other parts of the country or what have you. And actually, it's about making sure that the children are ready at each stage. So we will be preparing them for the 11 plus exam, and we will prepare them for 7 plus exams if that is needed at the time, because let's face it, the knowledge is knowledge, and children will acquire the knowledge that they need. In order to get exam preparation, we don't have to throw the curriculum out of the window. We don't have to just constantly do exam after exam after exam. There are other ways of doing it. There are other ways of ensuring that children are able to share their knowledge within a time frame, and that's the exam preparation. The children will also need to be aware of that, because it's a rite of passage. Sometimes just sitting an exam, children actually enjoy it. I've seen them before. They get their pencils out, they put their pens down, and it's their time to show off their knowledge, and they quite enjoy that. Some children, not all obviously. But I think the 11 plus is a rite of passage. It is something that they will have to do at some point, and we need to prepare them, but we don't need to overly prepare them and put the pressure on.
So Alleyn's being north of the river is hugely exciting.
Yep.
What's your challenge? Is it to simply replicate what's going on in Dulwich and badge what's already here in Hampstead? How will that process work?
I think it's also recognising that Alleyn's north of the river is not exactly a carbon copy. We also need to be mindful of the parent body that we have in Hampstead. Also the slight differences that we have in terms of we are new in this part of London, and we don't have 400 years of history to rely on. I think it's about educating people north of the river about the values of Alleyn's, what they stand for and why they stand for those values.
I suppose some people have said content is king,
yeah.
But if anything, context is King Kong in this instance. It's about taking an Alleyn's principle and reimagining it for local surroundings, for a local populace, for a different community, perhaps.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think it's also about making sure that what we are doing north of the river, that golden thread goes through the Thames and is here in Hampstead in equal measure as it is in Dulwich, and that actually fundamentally what we're doing with our students here mirrors those values, the rock values, but we may not have the massive grounds that they have in Dulwich, but what can we do to still provide that wonderful experience of the all-in programme here in Hampstead?
And how important is Hampstead to Alleyn's, and how important could Alleyn's become to Hampstead?
I would see it as a synergy between the two, to be honest, a hand in glove. It's really exciting that we are here north of the river and spreading the Alleyn's message. But again, that golden thread and that synergy, the hand in glove, need to replicate.
You've taught in a single sex environment,
yep.
And you're currently teaching in a co-educational environment. There are differences there, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
So I think the beauty about the independent sector is that you have choice. And not everyone is going to flourish in co-ed, but in equal measure, not everyone is going to flourish in single sex. And I think it's about the job of parents and educators, back to my triangle, of working together to identify what is the best setting and environment for each child to flourish. There are pros and cons to both. There's data and empirical research that say one gender does better in one type of school and another doesn't. But there's also empirical research that can argue that, which is why I think fundamentally it comes down to personal choice and preference.
Alleyn's.
Yeah.
You've been to Dulwich.
Absolutely.
How in tune was your personal philosophy? How Alleynsified have you become? Were you Alleynsified already without knowing it? What have you taken from Dulwich and Alleyn's that wasn't there already?
I think walking in on that first visit, I felt at home. It's very difficult to put a feeling sometimes into words. And often I say this when parents are choosing schools, I'm like, you get that feeling like buying a house. And I guess I felt that when I went into Alleyn's in Dulwich. It was that feeling of children being who they wanted to be. They were all different, and they were all happy, and they were all really purposefully focused and enjoying themselves. The noise that you get as you walk around, that joyful chatter, but also very purposeful. And it felt very much at home. So it obviously resonated with my pedagogy and what I believe education should be about. And also, I think those values that I also hold dear.
And what journey have you been on? Because we can talk about all we can be, we can talk about the rock values, but unless they're lived, these are just things that are written down. Do you think this was in your DNA before you'd have them articulated in that way? So
you mentioned the all we can be. A few headships ago, I was very clear when I was talking to people about what we did in our school and in our environment. And I said, we are here to make sure that our children become their best self. And I think all we can be and your best self are so closely aligned. It's almost the semantics of language there. So I think that sort of highlights the resonance and the similarities that there are with Dulwich and what I believe we should be doing as educators.
Do you think there's one thing that nursery and junior schools do too much of?
I think there's a perception sometimes when you work with the younger children that actually you have to do everything for them. Whereas actually, I think you need to step back and become more of a facilitator to the learning environment. Now, the early years are very good at that because all the activities will be laid out to facilitate the children's learning. As children get older, sometimes in the sort of, lower junior school age, the teachers want to do things for the children, or for a year 2 child, they might say, well, let me just zip up your coat, it's a bit easier. Actually, allow the child the time to do that themselves. And I think that's where we can sometimes step back as educators and just let the children be. And that also will help them find, if they're struggling with something, what it actually is they're struggling with. And then knowing when to step in and actually support.
Do you think parents would be surprised, even shocked, by some of the ways that their children behave when they're not around? For good or for bad?
So there was a recent article that came out about pupil behaviour at home, and it was really fascinating because parents were saying, gosh, my child is terribly behaved at home. I find it really hard to get them to sit down and do their prep or to sit down and do something else. It must be such a challenge at school. And actually, I think that might be true. And the research to this article was suggesting that it's because the children have spent so much energy behaving, following the school rules, doing what they should be doing and conforming to those norms. Actually, when they get home, it just shows home what a lovely safe space it is that they can kick back and they can let all those other behaviours and those stresses out at home that they may have been holding in to behave and conform in school.
You've certainly made me feel slightly better as a parent, which I appreciate. Before we look to the outside world and trying to solve a real world problem for the outside world, talk to me about what you're preparing children for. Is it for the next stage? Is it for the outside world? Is it an unknown world? What do you look at when the children leave you? What are they going into?
So I think you've got a short-term and a long-term answer to that. So in the short term, obviously we're a junior school, so we're preparing children for transition. So transition at 11 into our senior school or another senior school. But I think the long term and what education is there to do is to prepare you for your future. And everybody's saying it. We don't know what that future is going to look like. We don't know what the world is going to look like. And we certainly don't know what jobs are going to be out there, which is where I think that values-based education comes to the fore, because it's all very well knowing that 1066 was the Battle of Hastings. But so what? Have we learnt anything from it? Do we know what actually was going through the minds of those characters in those days? And I think that's where we need to be now. We can go and find knowledge far more easily than I could when I was at school, when we had to go to the library and get the encyclopedia out, etc. But now it's more about educating children to the validity of the knowledge that they're finding. Is it really true knowledge, or is it Wikipedia and somebody's just popped something up there, and is it real fact? But so it's about those skills to challenge and to understand, but it's also to have the right values in the world of AI, super AI, and who knows where that's going to be. If our children are going to be the programmers of those, we need to make sure that they have the right moral compass if they're going to be programming things that make life and death decisions going forward.
Let's stay with technology, since you've raised that. I was going to come on to it a bit later. Have you strong views on technology in the classroom and in children's lives more broadly?
So I think technology in the classroom has a great place, but it's how it's used to support the learning. It shouldn't be used instead of the learning. So let me give you an example. We are following an AIQ, Alleyn's Intelligence Quotient curriculum. And a lot of prospective parents have come to me and they're a bit fearful of this term because with all the AI that's happening in the world at the moment and it's in the news all the time, they are thinking that their 3-year-old is going to come to school, be put in front of an iPad or a device of any description, and they're going to have screen time. But that isn't actually the case, because actually it's about programming. It's also about the ethics and the morals that sit behind AI. One example I give quite frequently is a lesson that we've done where we get the 3-year-olds to tell us how to make a sandwich. And so I'll bring Flossie back to the story. Flossie will say, get the bread. So we pick up the bread, still in its wrapper. Get the butter, still in the wrapper. Put the butter on the bread. Well, we all know that's not a sandwich, but it's about learning those processes and that early debugging, if you like, at the age of 3. So it doesn't necessarily have to be screen time. I think the days of doom scrolling in school should never really happen. And it's about how you manage it, but it's also about how you teach children the benefits of a screen, if they have one as they get older, and actually how they can use it to support them and their learning, not just necessarily to fritter time away, shall we say.
there'll be some jobs when the children that you're teaching now that won't exist yet.
Yep.
There'll be some companies that will be the biggest companies in the world that won't have started yet. We don't know enough as adults about the sort of world they're going to be going into, do we?
No, and I think that's why it's really important that we teach skills and knowledge as opposed to knowledge. We teach skills to the children, and we also teach them the morals, the ethics and the values that they're going to need for the future. That questioning, and very much about just, why, what, when and how. Keep asking those questions, because that's what you're going to need as you get into the workplace of whatever that future is going to look like.
You mentioned AIQ.
Yep.
Talk to me about AEQ. So that's a different part of the Alleyn's framework. What does that mean? Bring that to life.
So that's the Alleyn's emotional quotient, and that's about the pastoral side of learning, but also that sense of belonging, about who you are and what you're going to be. I like to think of it this way. You think of a light bulb, and you have two filaments to make that light bulb shine. So you have your AIQ, which is your more academic program here as this filament, and the AEQ is your pastoral side of who you are and your emotional quotient. You put those two filaments together and the light bulb lights up. Around that is our all-in program, and that's almost like the glass around the filaments to make your light bulb.
Let's stay in the school for a minute. And we may come on to this. I know I've been threatening to go to the outside world for a few questions now, but I've been fascinated by the chat. Do boys and girls learn differently?
Again, I'm going to come back to the individual, because I think it's about what's happening inside a child's brain, and everybody is wired differently. There is research out there to say, yes, boys learn differently to girls, but there's also the counter argument as well. And I think it's about ensuring that the offering that we have is appropriate for all. So just because somebody is one gender doesn't mean they're going to learn the same way as someone else who's the same gender. It's again about the individual.
I want to finally, come to this outside world question. I want to throw three issues at you, and then we can discuss one in a bit more detail. We're going to try and crack it in 5 minutes, which will be borderline impossible. But let's look at gender and specifically boys in education. Let's look at the mental health crisis, or let's look at the BBC. What would you like to look at in more detail?
I think the mental health.
I'm pleased you said that. Have you strong views on the way that mental health is discussed now compared to how it was discussed 10 years ago?
I think it's much more open, and I think people actually are far more understanding of mental health issues. There's a lot more knowledge out there. There's a lot more information that we can tap into, and there's also a lot more understanding of the why and how we can support people that are struggling with mental health. I think one of the key drivers that we as educators need to do to support our children in case they hit a situation where they may struggle is, I think it's about the resilience and about building personal resilience, but also that open dialogue, and that we shouldn't shy away from talking about it. It's not something to be poo-pooed away and put in a cupboard.
Have you seen that in your team as well, the people that you work with?
Absolutely. I think there's much more openness, more open dialogue. People are more willing to say, I'm finding this a bit tough, actually. Can I have some help? And I think that's a really positive thing, actually, rather than just struggling on and it gets worse and worse. And then people hit a breaking point. I think recognising open dialogue and having an environment where it's okay to say, I'm not okay.
And do you think children are aware of that? Before the age of 10, do you think children are having conversations about mental health, or they might be having the feelings, but they're not armed with the vocabulary, perhaps?
So yes, absolutely. And part of our pastoral system and part of our curriculum is to support them with that language. We mark Children's Mental Health Day. We mark that in our school, and we talk about how some people react and respond differently. And obviously it's done in a very age appropriate way, but it's actually recognising but giving them the tools of language to understand what their feelings are. And not all feelings are bad. Some people will say, oh, it's really bad to be angry. Actually, it's not. What do you do with that anger? How do you need to recognise it, and then you respond or react to it.
I remember during COVID talking to my children. I found it really tough to explain to them that the biggest thing that had ever happened in the world was happening right now to them.
Yeah.
Do you think the children you're teaching are aware of what's going on in the wider world? And are you conscious of that?
Yeah. So obviously, the younger they are, everything has to be at an age appropriate level. You're not going to talk about the geopolitical situation that we're in with 3-year-olds per se, but what you would do is you would talk to them about rules of law and democracy and the fact that we live in a democratic society and what does that mean, and they can vote for their pen monitor, for example, and that's those sort of early stages of understanding that wider world. I think when there are things that are happening in the world, children should be aware of it, but it needs to be done in a very age-appropriate way. And I think you also have to be very sensitive to the way some children may react or respond. So I think it's very much about understanding where they're coming from, what their backgrounds are, but also thinking about their understanding of where they fit in that wider world.
And are there simple tips for parents? Is it just read the Week Junior when they become age 9? Is it as simple as absorbing the right stuff? Is it and content?
And I think it's not shying away from it,
right.
Because I think what happens is if something's happening in the world and the children have heard about it, now they might hear about it from other children. They might see something on the news themselves if they're skipping through the channels, or they might hear the 6 o'clock news when you're making supper, for example. I think don't hide away from it, because what will happen is they will make it bigger in their mind. I think it's about saying, okay, let's find some time now. Now's a good time. We've got half an hour. Let's talk about it. What do you know so far? Okay, let me help you understand and if it is upsetting a child, I think it's about saying, okay, why is that making you feel the way you are, and unpicking it so they actually understand what's happening a bit more. I think, for example, wars are something that children find quite difficult to understand, particularly when we're talking so much about tolerance in school, and we're talking about how it's okay to be different and that we should be accepting of all of these things, and then they see something that isn't what they're hearing in school. And I think that can be a challenge sometimes for children to understand. And I think it's just about gently talking to them, saying, no, but this is what we understand. This is how we live our lives, but not everybody is in the same boat. How can we make it better? What can we do?
Do you find talking to children and going on a voyage of discovery with them is almost more effective than imparting knowledge yourself?
100%, because then they own it.
Yeah.
And if they own it, they understand it more.
Let's go on to you as a leader, Sarah. We've had some conversations about your philosophy. Talk to me about when you leave the room, what do you think people say about you behind your back? Both good and bad.
So I think they probably, I've had some feedback from some of my team as we transitioned to becoming Alleyn's and the things that were happening around that time. Also, I was new in post, and there were changes that were happening, bringing 2 schools together. We were a nursery and a pre-prep separately, and I was brought in to bring those 2 schools together and make them feel like one. And the feedback I had from some of my team were, we know that when you make a decision, you've thought it through and you've spoken to people. We may not necessarily agree with everything that you're saying. We may not like it, but we do know that it's for the greater good and it's for the good of the school and moving us forward. So I've had that feedback, which I find really refreshing, actually. And I find it very empowering that people feel they can be that honest with me as well. So I'm sure when I walk out of the room, they probably go, what's she going to do next? Why are we doing this next thing? What's the why behind it? But then they rationalise it and go, there is a reason behind it, and she'll tell us when she can.
Have you changed your mind recently?
Yes, I have.
And what caused that?
Discussion. So I had a decision about something we were going to do with our curriculum, and I thought this was going to be a great thing to do, and we would follow this particular path. And it was brought, somebody had spoken to me about it and I'd agreed it, and this is what we were looking to do. We discussed it in our SLT, and listening to all the different viewpoints, I came to realise that actually that maybe wasn't the only option. There were other options. So let's go and explore them and come back and make that decision together.
Interesting. How do you deal with mistakes? We'll start with yours and then we'll go to other people's.
So I think mistakes are some of the biggest learning opportunities you can possibly have. I've made lots, actually, and I see them almost as maybe a superpower or a strength. I don't shy away from them and I don't hide them. I'm human. We are all human and we make mistakes. I think the important thing is that we recognise it and we share it rather than trying to cover it up. I think you have to just say, oops, it was unintentional. This is what I've done. How do we get out of it? How do we sort it?
Do you think colleagues have flourished as a result of your leadership?
I think colleagues have flourished in my schools, whether that's a direct impact of my leadership or whether they were bound to flourish anyway. In all the schools I've been in, the majority of my leadership team have moved on to more senior leadership roles. I do model myself on a previous head that I worked for who did that with me and with the leadership team I was part of. And she had the expectation of knowing that we would move on to other things. And she made sure that we challenged ourselves and got out of our comfort zone to do other things. And I try to encourage my team to get out of their comfort zone and find something new to challenge them and then to move themselves forward in their careers, if that's what they wish.
What's the best bit of advice you've ignored?
Best bit of advice I've ignored. You can't be all things to all people.
Somebody will be watching this right now.
Yeah.
As preparation for a job interview.
Right.
How are they going to get the job?
Be their authentic self. And just say what comes into your mind, the honest you, and be kind.
Do you feel alone in this role or do you feel well supported? And where do you go to for that support?
So headship or command, as it is in the Navy, can be quite a lonely place to be, particularly when all eyes are on you and everybody expects you to have the answers. I do feel supported. I have a very good leadership team who we can be very honest with each other. And I think that's really important, having a safe space to throw your ideas around and be really honest. And sometimes as a leader, you are on your own and you do have to go to somewhere. I go to the gym and sometimes just allow my mind to wander wherever it needs to go. But also in terms of the organisation, the way we're set up, there are other heads that we can go and talk to. And there are other people who've been in similar situations. And sometimes it's just nice to say, what would you do if you were in this situation? And you just sound out to each other.
Has the leadership at Alleyn's excited you? The opportunity to work with new people, a new vision perhaps?
Absolutely. And I think I love change. So I'm obviously in the right role because we are doing change at pace. And I think the leadership at Alleyn's is very collegiate, which is the leadership I enjoy and I like. It's given another string to the bow, another group of people we can throw ideas about. And the energy and the vision I very much appreciate as well. And that driving forward at pace is great.
Do you sleep well?
I sleep like a baby.
Do you?
Yes.
And there are no issues keeping you awake at night on change, on work, on more broadly?
I think they probably should. But as a child, I was told I was going to grow in my sleep, and I'm ever hopeful that might happen. So no, I don't have problems sleeping. I have things that I mull over and I ruminate over. But when my head hits that pillow, I'm gone.
Do you switch off on a holiday?
I try to. I do try to, and my husband is quite strict about me leaving the work phone at home. But then I do give certain people my personal number as well in case they need to contact me. I do, though, trust my team that if I'm not there, and I trust them to only, if they need to contact me, they can. But often what happens is they deal with it.
The children you teach, the people you work with, do they see the soft side of you? Do you like them seeing the soft side of you? Is there a soft side of you that they will never see?
No, they do see the soft side of me. We have a lot of fun, particularly in our assemblies. I think it's about having fun. We use things like, we always say happy Friday instead of Friday. And that's become a part of our school life. Every morning on a Friday, they'll come in and they'll high five me as they say Happy Friday. I think also the fact that some of the younger children volunteer to come up to me to share their news or to tell me that they've got a new pencil toy, or they just sometimes want to come and go, can I just hold your hand for a bit? That to me shows that they do see the soft side and they feel comfortable around me.
And do you think that's important to the parents of the children that you're working with?
I think so, because a parent wants their child to know that they're valued, but they also want their child to be comfortable with the adults around them. And I think that's a positive thing.
One of the Alleyn's phrases is going all in.
Yep.
What does that mean to you?
I think that is all in, means all encompassing, 100%. And I think that is a great thing to have. You give 100% to everything that you do.
And do you think that children can get as much from dance as they can from maths? Do you think, should there be a priority? Should there be some kind of an ecosystem of teaching children different things?
Now, I think maths, English and the traditional 3 R's have their place. Of course they do. But actually, it's really important to find your own thing, to be able to be as creative as you want, to be able to follow your passions. And if that is dance, or if that is music, or if that is just reading a book, then we should be facilitating all of those things. I think every child should have the opportunity to try everything. And one of the things I've said, I did an assembly when I got my first headship, and I'd been slightly frightened of heights, and I'd been in a Sea King helicopter search and rescue, and I was winched out by my brother-in-law and dangled over the side, and this was all videoed. And I just said to the children, look, I was absolutely petrified when I did that. I won't be doing it again, I can tell you, but try everything once, and you might like it, you might hate it, but at least you've tried it.
How important is it that you speak the same language as the children you're teaching? I mean, is it important for you to know who BTS, the K-pop band, are? Is it important for you to know who the Sidemen are? Or is it good to have a healthy distance from those popular culture moments?
I think there's a balance to be struck, actually, because it's about that popular culture reference, isn't it? And sometimes that's age defined. And I think it's about being open and saying to them, who's that? And then they can educate you. And I think that's okay. I think understanding that they are going to have groups or bands or things that they enjoy, cartoons, for example, at younger ages, be aware of them, but you don't necessarily need to be so aware that they become part of your cultural reference, because I think you still need to remain true to yourself.
Have you got a favourite Paw Patrol character?
No.
Okay, not about it. Okay. Sarah, how do you unwind? Is it a box set? Is it a long walk? Is it all of those things? How do you switch off?
So it kind of depends, actually. I do enjoy going to the gym. I have a personal trainer, and I do enjoy that hour twice a week that I do that. I also enjoy a crisp winter Sunday afternoon walk, post Sunday lunch maybe. But also I quite like putting the fire on, getting a box set out, and curling up and taking my mind away into that box set. It kind of depends. I also do enjoy spending time with friends, and just meeting up for a coffee or going round to their house and putting the world to rights.
What would your friends say about you?
Never sit still. Always doing something, and surprising.
Surprising. That's interesting. And what box sets have you chanced upon recently that you would recommend?
I've just finished Bridgerton.
And how was it?
I did enjoy it. I think I just enjoy looking at the colours, the outfits. I quite like the modern music being played in that traditional way as well. Quite enjoy that. And I do quite enjoy a Marvel movie, I won't lie. I love a superhero.
It might be because my questions haven't been very good. It might be because there's another area of focus. What would the one takeaway you want people watching this to go away with be?
I think if you're a parent, listen to your child, let them be who they're going to be. Don't try and direct them into a course of travel or a career that you would like them to be in. I think if you're a fellow educator, follow the passion, keep going. It's a privileged role, and it's also, I believe, one of the most important jobs you can have, which is educating the future and shaping the future world.
I'm going to go right the way back to the beginning.
Yep.
About service. Do you see the teaching side of your life as much of a service as the reservist side of your life?
Yes, because I think there are commonalities there. And I talked about, being dedicated to what you're doing. You are providing a service, but you are also in a role where people look up to you and respect you for what you're doing. And I think you should never take that too lightly.
Brilliant. Sarah, thank you so much for being our guest. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.